It's actually probably something else. It's probably saying, I'm willing to pursue something that I'm passionate about. I'm willing to dedicate hours to something. I'm willing to even lose in front of everybody.
When you talk to them after they've done it, it doesn't hold the same significance, right? And I've always thought, I think it's because you realize how that game is played. Like at some point when you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh, now I see how that happens. And it loses some of its luster.
Women are taught very early to be nice and to be perfect. And so when you can kind of go, well, I'm not always going to be nice, because to win, you can't always be nice.
This is episode 155 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. Be a groundbreaker while staying grounded. So my guest today is powerhouse Gabby Reece. Gabby is a world-class athlete, a former professional beach volleyball player, to be specific. She is a model, an entrepreneur, and a New York Times bestselling author. Now, you may remember her, if you have been around a while, for the absolutely stunning power that she exhibited on the sand when she was playing beach volleyball in the 90s. She was Nike's first female spokesperson, something that we'll talk about in this episode, and also the first female athlete to design a shoe for Nike. She worked with the same designer who designed the Air Jordans. And in my book, those kinds of accomplishments make her a groundbreaker. But as you'll hear in this interview, she is also incredibly grounded. You know, maybe it's living in Kauai and Malibu, and maybe it's being married to big wave surfer Laird Hamilton, or maybe it's being a mom of 3 girls. But Gabby's power is grounded by deep humility and authenticity, which really made this conversation an absolute delight. So listen in as she shares how her early childhood gave her some of her superpowers, how she shifts the power in her marriage, why her groundbreaking work with Nike isn't really the high point of her career, and what advice about health and well-being she has for all of us as fellow working moms. You're in for a treat today. Let's meet Gabby Reece. So Gabby, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
You are a delight, and I've enjoyed catching up a bit before we went on the air. I'm going to jump right in with a quote that I've heard you use that I think is such a great reflection of who you are. You say, nobody has the answers, but by sharing and connecting, we can make navigating life's obstacles a little bit easier. So with that as backdrop and knowing the humility that shows, I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey today. We're going to kind of take a trip down memory lane and connect the dots to where you are now. So I want to start with the early years, because not everyone may know your childhood story and how important of a role it plays in who you've become.
Yes, all of the great traits that I developed out of my childhood, but that you go back and you try to get rid of some of them. I'll try to breeze through it quickly. When I was very young, like 2, I lived actually with my mother. My parents, I don't think they were together very long. My mother won't admit it, but I feel like they really just had, like they were together for a short period of time. I was born in 1970, and then when I was 2, I was in Mexico City, and my mother was training dolphins. I'm not making that up, in a circus, and I got whooping cough, and my mom was very young, and she was trying to work and take care, and really what she thought, what she decided, and probably was right, even though I was unhappy about, she had childhood friends of hers raise me. So from 2 to 7, I lived in Long Island, New York. My mother's from Long Island. And it was a couple. I called them my Aunt and Uncle Joe, and they were like neighborhood hangouts. And, they hung out with my mom. And my Uncle Joe just come back from Vietnam, and whether they couldn't or chose not to have children, I'm not sure. And they took myself on from 2 to 7, and then my mom was remarried to my stepfather. And during that time, my father passed away in a plane crash when I was 5. So that was sort of important, I think. And then I moved down to the Caribbean. My mother married my stepfather, who was from Puerto Rico. And there's something really important in this for me, I believe, for 2 reasons. One being my biological father, and all my family's from Trinidad. So I have a West Indian background, and this gave me an opportunity to really live in the culture. I mean, it's different, but it was similar. And also, I think part of the reason my marriage, my husband and I have really always connected is he's an island person. And so really formatively, I grew up in the Virgin Islands, and I would say that I am an island person, like in my heart. You know, like Laird jokes, he's what they call a haole or white, but he's like, thinking brown, looking white, because he's from Hawaii. So he has a Polynesian sort of outlook to life. So that was important. And then it's a great place to grow up, sort of in the way that life is simple and what you're taught. You're not really, there's some interesting things that, like, it doesn't occur to you. And then I think at a certain point it can be a little bit tricky. And for me it was. And so my junior year of high school, my mom moved me to Florida, which I think, again, was equally as important, because then I went to a very conservative Christian school, which is pretty laughable because I came from this really loosey-goosey culture of the West Indies, and now I'm in this incredibly conservative school in St. Pete, Florida. But it gave me direction. It gave me discipline. I got really involved in sports. I had dabbled in volleyball prior to that, but I was 15. I was 6'3", and I met a lot of nice people. And when I say that, I believe the essence of religion is really would give one greater capacity for love and non-judgment and things like that. And so I met a lot of those people. And then out of that experience, I was given I was offered many scholarships, weirdly, in basketball and volleyball. And I chose to play volleyball at Florida State University. And so I graduated at 17 and I moved out. And during that time, I have had a very tumultuous relationship with my mother. I think I was heard, and we're also just very different people. I now look back and, there's an interesting thing, and I want to emphasize this, that sometimes we create a narrative, and I'm sharing information, but I also I hope that within this, I have transcended this narrative. There's no redirecting back to, unless it's actually in gratitude, that, that's what I had to go through. I think we have to let go of that at some point, right? Having said that, again, I'm just giving information. And so why am I saying that? Because when you have to take care of yourself in a different way, my aunt and Uncle Joe did a beautiful job, but it jolted me out of, this sort of environment. Like, you sort of start looking at the world differently, I think, when you don't live with your parents. Yeah. And you think, wait a second, what's going to happen, and all these things. So I developed a trait that I think I already naturally have, because one of my daughters and I are the same birth symbol, and I watch her and I think, oh, okay.
There it is. Right.
You're kind of born with. Uh-huh. It's not even the stuff you want them to happen. It's like overthinking 50 steps down the road when life really, tens only are going to happen, but you've already managed to worry about 50.
Yes.
These stupid things. So I think I had some built-in things, and then getting emphasized. So at 17, I went out and went to college and played ball, and it was really hard for me because I was a beginner ultimately, and I kind of learned on the fly as I was playing, and this was part of my job. And then at 18, that summer, I had been given the offer to model, and I hadn't taken it prior to that when I was like 15 or 16. And so I went to New York and I started modeling, and I started making money. And then I went back to school in August to get ready for, it's called 2-a-days. You practice twice a day and you get ready for your season. And I had worked enough that December, the end of my semester and my season, I then gave up my scholarship, and I did what's called paid to play. So for the next 2.5 years, my coach, Dr. Cecile Renaud, who is a very dear friend and a mentor, and someone I was incredibly afraid of. I think it's reverence, but I think it was fear too. And she said, hey, when you're here, you're here. And when you're there, you're there. And she let me get out of spring training. So if I was there from August to December, I was playing ball and I was going to classes. She let me take off spring, but I'd have to go to summer school and jam up on credits to be eligible to play. And so I did that for 4 years. And I don't know if this takes me into a young adulthood, but I had a good, successful modeling career. I would say that I viewed it as a job and opportunity. I don't know that I was ever like, oh, I'm so pretty now. I don't know that I ever I think when you're 6'3" and they don't pound that idea into your head when you're young.
Yes.
Like people were more like, I think the adults were like, wow, this is an interesting looking girl, but you're not looking for adults talking to you about being interesting. You're looking for your peers to be like, you remind us of us and you're cool and we're same and you can wear what we can wear. And I couldn't do any of that. So I think that I never really identified with my external self in that way. Obviously I knew my size was sort of a
defining
personality in the,
yes.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to that identifying with your external self in a little bit, but I'm curious about out of your childhood and your intention to not be victimized by it and not have it be a narrative that controls you. What superpowers do you think it gave you? What do you think was accelerated or accentuated because you had the childhood you did?
Well, I didn't have a lot of people, sort of my aunt and Uncle Joe did a good job, but let's say after that, but even still, I think, organization and looking ahead, anticipating. So if I needed to get somewhere, I usually had like 3 alternative ways. So I let's say I could draw a line into my professional career. People say after my professional career in volleyball, when I played on the beach, they're like, well, how did you transition? And they call it reinvent yourself or what have you. But I was always like very much dedicated to the working in the now, but I was always aware that there would be a shelf life to it. And I was looking ahead, trying to really connect to, well, how, what are you going to think you're going to want to be doing? And how do you get that started as well? Because everything takes time. So I think that learning to anticipate was something I learned in a positive way to my, in my adult life and in my work life. Not relying a ton on people. And actually, I have to say that that's probably a strength and a weakness. Important. For example, if you're in a relationship, to say, I need help, that probably took me 10 years into my marriage to be like
able to say that, right?
And to say like, I really need help, because it was like, no, I got it. And also for different reasons. My mom was a very beautiful woman, and I often felt my perception was that she was taking advantage of people. And so I never wanted to be that, because I knew clearly that people tire of that. And so I think there was a lot of dynamics that sort of made me look at the world and understanding to the limited power that being what's called beautiful is. I learned that even as a reinforcement in modeling. It's like, when girls don't seem any more confident or robust, and they are literally they are the most beautiful girls in the world. Yes. You see them and you think, oh my God, you're one of those unicorns that have it all. Like, you have like your body, your teeth, your face, like, oh, you have it all. And you still seem miserable and your boyfriend's torturing you like everybody else. So I think it was, all that was really helpful to find the way to understand, like people, I'm never going to lie to people and say I didn't strategically use my looks. Of course, I played that board, but I didn't attach myself to that. And I also understood what was more important was always to deliver, was to work hard. So, I was hedging probably both, because I played a very small sport. I mean, beach volleyball is a small sport. So I was like, okay, what tools do I have? How do I do this? So
I think that's interesting. And the notion that there's a strategy and that it's an asset that can add value, but it's adding value on top of some other capability for you that, modeling, arguably that's the capability, but there's this athleticism or now entrepreneurship that it's an asset you can bring to the party, but not the only asset, not the only card you're playing.
Well, it's almost too the thing that if you think that's what you're going to play, it's almost like the thing that's like yucky about you then.
Yeah.
So it's like people will be like, wow, I really like, they will enjoy you on a whole other level if that isn't what you're bringing to the table. But don't be an idiot. Like, of course you can't be like, oh, I didn't know. But I think it's like when people think that that's enough to contribute to the party, it almost becomes the thing where you're like, ew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I love that you just say, ooh, that's like the perfect word, right? It's noticeable. It's off-putting. People get it. Yeah. So for you, this, building these superpowers of independence and strategy, really keeping multiple pathways open, figuring out where are you going to go next. I'm kind of getting all these chess analogies coming. When you turned pro, in beach volleyball. In your words, it's a small sport. That was 1992, right? And you had the modeling career going at the same time. I think that lit some wildfire in your career as a groundbreaker. I mean, anybody who lived through that era can remember, you know, the hat turned upside down and the beach pictures that were taken. It was so iconic, like that a lot of us aspired to be you or to be someone like you. And one of the things we saw was confidence. Right? It telegraphs as confidence. And we have a lot of conversations in Brilliant Balance about confidence. So I'm curious, was it confidence for you and for all of the players you were out there with, or is it something else that telegraphs as confidence when we're viewing it from the outside?
It's actually probably something else. It's probably saying, I'm willing to pursue something that I'm passionate about. I'm willing to dedicate hours to something. I'm willing to even lose in front of everybody. Because I believe enough in what I'm doing and in the quest. And I think that that's what's getting telegraphed, because quite frankly, you know, you play with great players and you play against great players, and you're well aware that they are all as talented and in some ways more talented than you. And so what you're doing is you're taking a chance. But within that, you know, you call it body of evidence. You win, you lose, you win, you lose. You've experienced both. Now you have this body of evidence. When I went to college, I didn't know how to play volleyball so well. I was decently athletic and I could listen.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that body of evidence. Even as a professional, right? There were players that were way more experienced in volleyball. But I was like, okay, there's so much I don't know, but I have a body of evidence. Even using modeling. I moved to New York at 18 by myself. We didn't have, you know, you had a little guide. You navigate going from all your appointments and you get to work on time and you're broke and whatever. You build this body of evidence that says, I may not know, but I believe I can try to figure it out and work it out and ask questions and say I don't know. And then obviously when you are competing and training and getting your butt beat by your coaches, and your teammates will always tell you the truth. They just will.
Yeah.
When you live in that space enough, I think it exudes like, yo, here I am. Like the good, the bad, maybe some strengths to maybe some, you know, weaknesses. I'm not afraid of the weaknesses. I don't love them. When you go to practice, you work on the weaknesses. Everyone isn't just being like, God, you do that one thing really well. That's what we're going to spend all day on. No, they're like, no, you're so bad at that. That's what we've got to make better. So I think when you live there, it's liberating. And I think it vibrates a different frequency, and women are taught very early to be nice and to be perfect. And so when you can kind of go, well, I'm not always going to be nice, because to win, you can't always be nice. And I'm certainly not going to be perfect. And in fact, I might do some really stupid mistakes in front, like on TV, let's say.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and so I love to win. You can't always be nice. And I also think to play, you can't always win. Like the confidence is what I'm hearing you say is the grappling with, I've got to be willing to lose out there. I have to be willing to totally blow it in front of a bunch of people in order to have the chance to play the game. And if I want to be in the game, then that comes with the territory. And I think that's a metaphor a lot of us can relate to, even if we're not pro athletes, right? The visibility of putting your work out there and giving it the opportunity to be judged, is it worthy or not, right? In the eye of the beholder, at least, is so trapping for so many women. And I'm constantly on my soapbox about that of, man, the thing that's stopping us from even starting is the fear of judgment, the fear of who's going to say that it wasn't good enough, right?
And I think also when you are a person, male or female, that says, hey, I understand I have to, you know, there's rules. Like when you play volleyball, right? There's rules. Like we're all sort of agreeing. Like we say practice at 2:00, you show up at 2:00, right? So you say, hey, on a certain level, I am going to play by the rules. But there's another part of me that feels so strongly about this quest that I actually don't care. Like I'm even willing to pay the price. I've cried behind a lot of bleachers getting my ass kicked. Mm-hmm. I've gone out many tournaments and I wasn't sure I would actually perform well. You know, I know a couple athletes that don't go through that. Actually, I'm married to somebody has a different relationship.
Superhuman.
Well, he has a different relationship, but I think it's when you go, and even that, and I'll keep going, which means that you have a level of resilience. So that could be interpreted as self-confidence, but I don't know that that's what it is.
Yeah, because the confidence narrative is always about, they look like they feel it in the moment. They look like they believe they're unstoppable. They look like they know they're not going. And that's so rarely the case when you get up close and personal, which is what I love about these interviews, is you get up close and personal. You hear, like, that's not actually how I felt that day. You know, I want to talk about the achievement of becoming a Nike spokesperson and designing a shoe, which happened during this same era, because it's a part of the story that may for you be a blip in the story, or it may be a pinnacle event. I'm curious, like, what role does that play in your personal narrative?
You know, I think for me, the only things that I really, and I try not actually to attach to too many of any of it, is the stuff that I was in charge of. Listen, a lot of what my career was timing. Billie Jean King or Martina Navratilova or even Chris Evert, like maybe they were just born like a little bit early, but they were laying down the foundation for athletes like myself. So I have to be honest, I understood. I was like, oh, this is a great opportunity. And they gave me this designer that did all the Jordans, Tinker Hatfield. And I was really set up for success, but because it wasn't really in my control, Nike chose me. I didn't do something so monumental to get that. I just look at it as really a good fortune that was bestowed upon me, and really nothing more than that.
I have to say, like, I'm so glad that that's how you answered that question. I didn't know how you would answer it. But because so often when you talk to someone who has been aspiring for the accolade, right? I want to make the 40 under 40 list in Forbes, or I want to get on this list or that list. When you talk to them after they've done it, it doesn't hold the same significance, right? And I've always thought, I think it's because you realize how that game is played. Like, at some point when you're on the other side of it, you're like, oh, now I see how that happens. And it loses some of its luster. Do you think that's true?
Yes. And also I was not raised in a way to understand all of those benchmarks. And I literally, in a really disciplined way, fumbled through the whole thing. I mean, there's certain strategies when the opportunities arose. I was very strategic, and certainly in differently once I hit my 30s. But certainly then, being someone or accomplishing things, that wasn't even really a part of my vernacular growing up. I didn't even equate myself with any of that. And you realize it is out of your control.
Yeah. So much of it. So what's in your control? When you look at what you have agency over and what's in your control, what do you focus on?
Well, I first focus on my health for sure, because that's on me. That's my responsibility. And I say this especially to women. You were saying your audience is a working mom, a lot of working moms. Your new baby or your 2-year-old is not going to go, hey, mom, it's really cool that like you're feeding me right now, but I think you've got 30 minutes, like you should go train. Like, it's just not going to happen. And if you're in a relationship, I happen to be in a relationship with a man, he's not going to be like, I was thinking, God, it would be so good for you to just go do some cardio. It's just never going to happen. And he loves me and he wants what's best for me. It's just not the way it's working. So what I have control over is my self-care. And why do I start there? Because my responses to everything else, oftentimes is so heavily intertwined with how good I'm feeling physically. And I don't mean just the way that I look. A lot of times we've been told, again, about, as women, like, our physicality is connected to if we fit into our genes from high school. And for me, it is it's like the avatar, it's the tool, and it connects me to my external world. So how is it feeling? Is it sleeping well? Does it feel energized? Do I feel powerful? Am I feeling the way I want to feel? And then it also goes from there. So the other things I'm in control of, my reactions, where I'm spending my time, where I'm leaking my time. These are things that are my relationships, my communication skills, my, I've had a few situations recently where, like, someone, it's like competition or what have you. what I'm really learning too is like when I can go, wow, that person just that's really cool. And that's hard to do, or, and celebrate it. It liberates me. Right. So, it's just constantly staying on top of your reactions. Cause we all say I want to be like this and I want to be like that and be present and all this like rhetoric that we all have. But at some point it's like, it stands in front of us, and how do we show up? And like, as we get older, do we get better at that?
Yes.
And then it could just be like, if you have young children, hey, mom's super tired. I used to tell my kids when they were little, I got to tell you, we're at the end of the day, and I don't think I have the patience anymore. So can you work with me? Because I'm like, what's going to come out it's going to be tough for everybody.
I used to say, I'm done being a mom for tonight.
Oh yeah.
No more mom left.
Oh yeah, I know. I used to say that sometimes. Especially one of my daughters, she has a lot of audacity, a lot. And I'd say, okay, so sweetie, here's the thing. Mom's going to stop talking to you like a mom, and Gabby's here. And Gabby's going to talk to you straight.
New game in town.
And I'm wondering too, like, I think Gabby had probably a couple swear words, but anyway, I think it's that, and trying always, even within the ferociousness, because I do have a side that is, and I don't know if it's because I really not growing up with parents per se that much. There's a part of me that's a very comfortable default, right? Like to warrior up. It right beneath it is like a little bit of anger probably. And I can get granular in about 4 seconds if you really want to get into it. I'm not going to be emotional. I'm not going to lose my mind. I'm not going to take it personal. So it can be ugly. And so what I've really tried to do as I get older, is to ask her because she's really the fearful one, to go into the back seat, and the person who needs to listen, who sometimes just needs to let people say what they want to say, and I don't need to make the record straight. Like all that, yes. Like those are the things I'm trying to do better now. And certainly teenage children will help you with that.
They do. I may need you to mentor me in this. Yes. So I heard you did a really brave thing on your podcast recently. You interviewed your 16-year-old daughter. I thought that was very brave, I have to tell you. And so the episode was like, I forget the title. It was like How to Parent a Teenager Well. Am I close? Something like that.
Yeah, and like, no, it was but it was in her words. It was like, your teenager from my teenager.
Yes. Yeah. And so, when you're listening today, she interviews her daughter. We'll link to this episode because I think it's fascinating. And I had my almost 16-year-old listen to that episode and said, and said, we need to chat about this. Because one of the things that I said is, I don't know that this is the easiest mom to have, nor do I think I'm the easiest mom to have. And so there was a lot of great dialogue that opened up out of that episode. So thank you for doing it. But I thought it was really brave. I'm not sure I'm brave enough to bring my teenage daughter on the show.
Well, listen, we've been through so many things, Reese and I, and I think it was like, it felt more important than like maybe even if I was going to have a moment of embarrassment, or I don't know what was going to happen. But I also know she's a very kind-hearted person. So she would probably save most of that for in private.
Yes. But she did a beautiful job. She was very honest, very real. It certainly wasn't like a performance. It was a very honest conversation between the two of you. Yeah.
Yeah. No one in my house knows how to perform.
They don't do that. The authenticity meter is high. It's high. So, and I also, you have some really, I think, unique and compelling views about your marriage that you've shared, and maybe just a few words about how you and Laird relate. We shared in the intro that you're married to Laird Hamilton, and he's kind of a surfer guy in a big, big way. Tell us a little bit about what you've learned about being married to that kind of a man.
I had this really interesting conversation with a friend of mine the other day. And so let's say you're going to choose somebody who would be called an alpha male, for lack of a better way to describe that. What does that mean? Typically what I have found with Laird is like, will protect us. He's defended our house from fires. Like we've had floods on Kauai and he's pulling people off the roof and at 4 a.m, like, this is a guy who's going to really show up and defend the family as a wife or a partner. He is very doting and loving, which for me, honestly, if I could be honest, I think that that's what I was looking for. Someone who could handle the things I couldn't. So I'm not going to be as good pulling people off the roof at 4 a.m. And I wanted somebody that I did feel cherished, and wasn't indifferent. I don't know that when I met Laird at 25 and I was making a very good living, was I looking for someone to pay my bills? I wasn't. But I was looking for somebody who was also equally dedicated. And what I knew very quickly about Laird is Laird was better at his sport than I would ever be. Laird is, he's a master at what he does. And I knew that then. And I knew that that was something that I would admire him for. And also if I said, stop doing that, he wouldn't. Like his dedication to it is for real. So I was like, that's important. But having along with that is like, I don't talk to Laird like, take the garbage out. It's like, I'm not Laird's mom, and he made that very, very clear. So there's sort of some tempering and gear changing. Like when I'm out in the world and I'm very matter of fact and naturally I feel very like masculine, like my communication. When I'm in my home, like Laird is so clear. If you make Laird dinner and you have sex with him on a regular basis and you're kind to him, he's good. And he wants me. If I want to go out and make $1 gazillion and crush the world and like do the stuff, he's like, amazing. But I really appreciate it when you, and I will say it, serve me, and not in the way that, but he's serving us too. And I always felt it was so interesting, women, and I later understood greater, because when it took so long for us to like, oh, we didn't vote, we didn't have all these equal rights. And then I'm coming back saying, oh, I'm taking on this role of service or submissiveness in the house. I understood later why people got their back up. But I also said, listen, I went to school on an athletic scholarship. In modeling, I was paid 10 times any male. A couple of years in beach volleyball. On our tour, the women's tour made more money than the men's tour. In 4-on-4, we were paid more than the men. So I actually was having the great fortune of not experiencing this. So it never occurred to me. So I should have developed a little sensitivity to that. However, having said that, he's of service too. Mm-hmm. He's showing up, he's doing all the small things. The difference is I'm not telling him.
Yes.
And if I need help, all I have to do is ask. Where we get into trouble is if we think, well, I would do that. Like if Laird said to me, I have an interview, him, at 3:00, and I knew our daughter needed to get pick up from tennis at 3:00, I would say, oh, of course, I'll get Reece. But the difference is I might say, oh, I have an interview at 3:00. Would you mind getting Reece? And he'd say, of course, I would love that. Because our brains work differently. But but having said that I believe people just need to understand what they want. And I just wanted to explore my very feminine side in my marriage. Having said that, I've seen plenty of people where one will take on the other energy, masculine and feminine, and it works beautifully. So it wasn't about telling people how it should be. And I've said this before, same-sex relationships, someone takes on the masculine and someone takes on the feminine. So people can go, oh, fair and equal. And I'm like, okay, total bullshit, number one. And if you give birth and you nurse and you bleed once a month and you give milk, by the way, it's a different experience. And I love how everyone's like, we're the same. Yes, same level of value.
You should say that again. Yeah. Same level of value, but wired very differently, designed differently. And by the way, individually, to your point, like the way you've navigated your marriage is different than the way you would navigate a business relationship, because that's what makes your marriage work, different than the dynamic you would need to bring to a business relationship.
Well, like when Sheryl Sandberg came out with the book Lean In, right? I have a ton of respect for her, but I'm like, how do you lean into family? Like, how do you lean into relationships? I feel like it's all about holding space for people. But see, I think my physical size and coming from such a masculine place either afforded me a moment to kind of suss that out, where if you were maybe coming out of college and fighting through the corporate ladder, you didn't have that opportunity. So I fully acknowledge that. But it's like, you kind of go, I don't know if you can lean into everything in life. I don't know if it's possible.
I think that's really interesting that you had power to cede, right? You had power to give. And so there was space to be given. And maybe some people experience it as there's not enough, there's a grappling for it, and then there's none to cede, right? Because they're so busy trying to get more. I think that's an interesting piece about your story, or anyone who has experienced power.
Yeah.
We've been talking a lot about power in this community. In
Place you're coming from. And I think the other thing that you should talk to women professionally about that they're going to be navigating is biological responsibility. I think it's an unfair thing to tell women, you can have it all. You just cannot. You can have it all, not all at the same time. And so it's like giving her the options and choices to understand the things that she's going to have to navigate so that she can navigate in a way that reflects who she is. Not the way the world tells you, not the way that your friends or somebody guilts you into thinking. Just trying to go like, hey, you know what? When I look back on all this, what's going to make me think like, hey, at least I tried in the way that is like who I am. And I think we overlook the power of biological responsibility.
I agree. I agree. I want you to talk more about having it all, the phrase. I've always thought of having it all as like, it's the choice to have anything you want, the potential to have it all, but not that you're supposed to go grab it all at the exact same time and try to carry it in your bare hands, right? Tell me a little bit about your views on that phrase. What do you think the movement was about?
Well, I think, first of all, it's because women didn't have a lot of choices initially. It was they were to take care for the home and then the children and such. And then it was that reminder of like, well, wait a second, you can go to work and you can be like a boss lady and like kick some ass and bring home a paycheck. And maybe you choose, actually, how about this? Maybe you choose not to do it that way. Maybe you choose to be only a professional woman. And then I know plenty of people who obviously become a single parent by choice, right? So I think for me, it was opening up that definition that what was available to women. But I think what's important is I wouldn't want the apex of my professional career to be simultaneously to when I have very, very small children. It feels like you'd be in constant conflict. And how could you actually do your job of being the big boss at this apex, where most likely it would take a lot of hours, probably some travel, and then that be in conflict with probably an innate feeling that you really did, even though it drove you nuts, wanted to be close and near your children and available to your children at that very young age. So it's like I said, it's just getting women to kind of ask themselves those hard questions. Like, well, am I going to be cool with like, I wasn't there when they were, little. Okay, I'm going to be cool with that. I can answer to that. Great. Be the boss. Oh, you know what? Or how do I keep the fire stoked while I really feel, for me personally, that I would like to be near my children when they're little, so that when they're older, I can get that fire big again and get back out into the workforce and all of these things, and not go, who am I now, and all of that. So I think I'm really interested in those conversations, because my whole thing is like, how do we empower people wherever they are and whoever they are? And there isn't a template or a standard that has to be followed, but that ultimately how we get them to take the reins of control and say, okay, this is my life and I'm trying to navigate it my way. And how do I do that best, so that when I come out of this, and I've said this many times, and you're 60 and then you just are really bummed and you're sort of disappointed.
Do the things. Yeah. But what I hear you coming back to is that chess analogy of like, it's sequencing. It's knowing what moves are in what order and feeling confident. Like sometimes you have to kind of lay in wait for a minute to make that next move if you really want it to be the big move. So you have an innate sense of that, of the timing and the sequencing that I think a lot of people are struggling with. And, often within our programming, we're looking at how do you cast a longer vision so you really can see how some of these moves sequence versus everything collapsing in on you and feeling like it has to happen today. That's really where we can go under. It's where the exhaustion, the overwhelm, like become untenable.
Well, and listen, the confidence that who you are, whoever's listening, whoever you are, that you're uniquely you and you contribute a unique gift and perspective that is of value. So how do you continue to develop that gift, that perspective? How do you expand that contribution so that when it is time that you come with this more full and rich contribution, that you don't have to compete? Like if you look next to you and you have your sister at work who like, she's a badass, you can be like, wow, she's a badass and she's contributing. gift and thing that she's contributing. And I think sports teaches you that very quickly, because everyone is a badass. If you want to get crazy, modeling teaches you, because you could have 4 girls equally all as beautiful and couldn't be more different, right? So I think it's learning to celebrate others, but also having a stillness and a sureness of who you are, and knowing that that has so much value, even if it's only for you at that moment. When you have a small baby, let's say, and you're sitting there and you're nursing this child, let's say, you feel that the world has left you behind. And within that moment, I think it's reasonable to feel that way. But then I also think it's so important to remember that that is not the case, and that, you're doing whatever it is that you need to be doing at that time, and that when it is time for you to contribute in this other way, you certainly will.
They will be there for you then. Yes, I love that.
I mean,
Okay, here's what I want to close with. I want to get to if you could tell everyone listening, and again, mostly professional women, lots of working moms at a really difficult moment in history where virtual schooling and all the things piled on their plates are happening as we record this. What's the kind of ladder they need to climb to stay foundationally strong? What are the few things that you think everyone needs to be doing to take care of themselves or take care of their mindset in this chapter?
that's a really great question. I think everybody's different, right? Like, you might have somebody who needs to go and go on a really nasty, sweaty run, or somebody else actually who that could be the worst thing for them, where they need to sit and do some deep breathing and, meditation, or get a breathing app or what have you. So I think it's first being in touch with, am I pent up or am I stressed out? And first navigating that. And if you have a day where you wake up and you go, man, today I feel pretty good, then get that great workout in. Have that uncomfortable conversation, either with your partner or your child or your work person, right? Those are the days that you have to really, really check in. I can't emphasize enough to women the importance of self-care. Be stingy with it, be greedy with it, be ferocious with it. Don't give it up for your children. Don't give it up for your partner. Don't give it up for your job. And I get it. I get sacrificing the now. I just have to do this now for this thing later. I'm a big girl. I have 3 daughters. I've been in a relationship for almost 25 years. I've built businesses. I understand that, but not to the point where there's never an end point, the contribution back to that physical practice. And I don't care if it's 10 minutes, but if you abandon that, I think it is really gets tricky. And so just saying to them, what do you need? Do you need to breathe? And you know what? It's okay. It's perfectly ladylike to sweat. Okay, let's get past that. Makeup, you can redo your makeup, whatever the million reasons are. And if you care for yourself, somebody told me once that if also one of the things we can give our children is for them to see us happy, so they know what that looks like. And we as women, we feel so really weird and guilty about that. And I understand, because I feel that too. But to really do that, because joy, they might be like, oh, mom, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And they will anyway. But if you showed them at least what it sort of looked like, none of us are happy all the time, but just it floats in and out, and you look in the eyes and you go, there's a person who seems overall kind of joyful or peaceful or something. You teach your kids that's important. And then the rest is occasionally, if you can get outside with your kids, occasionally turn off the screens. And you know what? I hate to say it. There's actually, I'm going to direct your professional moms to a lady, Dr. Kate Shanahan. I have nothing to do with her. She has a thing called the Hateful Eight, and it's the oils that are in our foods that give us chronic inflammation. And they're in everything, and they're really tricky. And so also, if we could get in our house and sort of get some of this out, because when we talk about just eating, trying to eat better, if you say to me, hey, Gabby, exercise or eating, the king is the food.
Oh, yeah.
The hardest thing. And by the way, if your kids want to eat pasta or chips, fine. It's okay. I'm not saying that. I'm saying understand what it all is. That's it. Just know what's happening in there. And then, sometimes don't buy it at the store. But, so it's just it's all that, but it's all going so quickly. And I think it's is most of it worth reacting to? And it's just simply not. If you're there and somehow you can pay your bills and your kids are safe, when it's this crazy as it is right now in this time of COVID, you know what? Focus on that.
Yeah. I think that people want some magic answer, and I'm grateful for you grounding them in these basic principles. Like, eat something good for you, move in a way that feels right for that day, whatever that is, right? Slow movement, fast movement, whatever you actually tune in and figure out that you need. And I think this notion, you've brought it up a couple of times, about learn to temper your reactivity. Learn to not be reactive, but to be responsive, and to be really in touch with how you're feeling is the only way that you can control that response. Like, I think those are great parting thoughts for people to spend some time with. What's in your way that's keeping you from doing those things regularly? What are the messages that you're telling yourself that might be preventing you from saying yes to things you hear over and over again from us on this show and from all the others? So those are great pieces of advice. I have a really quick speed round. Fun
And
questions.
I always like to remind people, I don't know that perfect's the goal.
No.
Like, just whatever. It's not going to happen.
Let go of perfect. Yes. Let go, but like, do something, right? Your point about you may not be able to get every piece of food perfectly in their mouth. Do something.
Bit of excellence. That's all we're doing.
I love it.
Do your speed round.
These are quick. All right. First one is, what makes you feel brilliant?
Oh, when everyone is like safe with no stitches and they're in bed and they're fed and the house is sort of moderately clean, and like I feel like I'm kind of okay for tomorrow. And when I've had a very strategic, healthful, combative conflict with either my children or my husband.
Awesome. What is your favorite time-saving or productivity hack?
Well, this isn't sexy, but when I have the rare opportunity to be alone in my car is actually the time that I decompress. And I use that to recenter so that because people go, do you meditate? It's like, who the hell has time for that? I find those moments, I call it active meditation, so that I can go back to the middle and sort of try to function my best from there. Sometimes I'm on tilt, but I try not to too often.
Love it. What have you learned to say no to?
Everything. I've always said no. People, okay, baby showers is top of the list. You better be my best friend if I'm going to your stupid baby shower. Girls' night, unless it's like the girls you really want to be with, and usually girls that have girls' night are none of the girls you want to be with. They're all like just broken up. They're drinking too much. It's like, okay, I say no to everything. I go to bed early. I've said no since I was 18 or 19, and I don't apologize. There's an expression, no explaining, no complaining. I don't give reasons or bullshit reasons why. I just say, no, I can't make it.
So good. Okay. What is one dream that you're chasing these days?
I have, listen, we worked a lot in business, and there's a part of me that's looking for a level of mobility beyond financial, where it's sort of I can, create things, make things. If we were talking about like acquisition, whatever, that's what I'm interested in.
Fascinating. What's the song you turn on when you need to get in the zone?
Oh, I don't know. Some of them, I don't know. I'm on the zone a lot. I'm trying to get out of the zone.
Oh, that's a great, I'm trying to get out of the zone is a great answer.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm like at a certain point, I think it's, that's one thing I can work on, which is the open looseness. I'm always trying to work on that.
So, okay, this is an unplanned question. Do you know your Enneagram type?
No.
Okay. I've guessed, but I it's hot right now, right? Everybody's talking Enneagram. I thought maybe she would know what it was. Gabby, this has been delightful. Thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your ideas. I think I'm confident everyone listening took something unique away from what you shared. And I love that you settled in and were totally real with us. It really goes back to what I said at the beginning, that ability to be a groundbreaker in so many ways, but stay so grounded is immensely inspiring. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. And I think we're all in it together. So it's just important to keep supporting each other. And I will end by saying this. It is nothing that each of us do. We are only merely either gatekeepers or stewards of whatever thing that we're possessing or an opportunity. So just be a good steward.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, that was fun. I don't know about you, but I could talk to Gabby all day and really enjoyed the conversation with her. What a force of nature. I mean, just a powerhouse. And yet, as I said in the intro, so deeply grounded and so humble, which I think you hear with every word that she shared today. So if you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show wherever you queue up your podcasts. Well, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Gabby as much as I enjoyed having it. You can just hear how grounded she is, how truly humble, despite all of the accomplishments. She is so relatable, and I found the conversation to be so much fun because of that. Listen, if you liked this episode, please subscribe to the show. You can do that wherever you queue up your podcasts. And then come join us in the Brilliant Balance Facebook group, where there is always a good conversation going on after the show. Next week, I cannot even believe this, is the 3-year anniversary of the podcast. So we're doing an anniversary episode. It's a milestone I'm excited to celebrate with you. So until next time, my friends, let's be brilliant.